You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we show business owners and entrepreneurs how to diversify into real estate by equipping you with the tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Ciminillo.
Well, hey guys, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. It is a new year. It's been a whole year since I've seen you last. I promise that is the only dad joke that I will do during this episode, but you gotta love it. 2025 is upon us, and if you're anything like me, you're probably sick, absolutely sick, either with yourself or other people that have talked about goal setting, New Year's resolutions. Every year it comes up, and I think we all kind of roll our eyes for a couple of reasons. Number one, because you have unsuccessfully tried and attempted to create some kind of change in your life, some kind of new habit, achieve some kind of goal that you did not stick with. So it's a painful reminder of your lack of follow through. Or two, it's just overdone, and people put so much emphasis on goal setting and doing that at the beginning of the year when, there's always a great time to create change in your life, especially if it needs to happen, not waiting until some kind of hype up thing that's just a lot of fluff with not a lot of substance. So I think that's why. So is it a waste of time? It's a good question, right? And if you would have asked me 2 to 3 years ago if I thought goal setting was a waste of time, I would have said, yes, it is. And that was largely because I am an eternal optimist and have had a pattern of setting goals, which I conflated goals with dreams. They're two different things, by the way. And I was a dreamer, and I was just unsuccessful in actually creating some kind of lasting change in my life, right? Or some kind of goal that I wanted to attain that seemed just that proverbial carrot always in front of me. And so it felt very frustrating for me because I was like, what am I missing that other people, quote unquote, have seemed to discover when it comes to achieving goals? Well, in the last couple years, sadly enough to say, it's better late than never. I have personally come a long way in learning how do I achieve goals? How do I create some kind of lasting change in my life? And it's very difficult. If you're one of those sick individuals out there that goals come very easy for you, praise God for you, and we appreciate you. But it's you almost need somebody who had to learn it the hard way, which is me. So that's why I am going to spend the next 20 minutes giving you some insights to frame, hopefully for you, proper goal setting mindset so that you can avoid the frustration and the dumb tacks that I've experienced and actually achieve some kind of momentum in your life this year in 2025. So maybe you've had this pattern like myself, right? You're confronted with a problem, some kind of challenge, some kind of disturbance, something that's discontented in your life. You're not where you want to be, or you have a destination you want to go to. You want to change, which I always want to change. I always want to grow. So you set a goal. And to quote, Guardians of the Galaxy, you make 16% of a plan, right? Which, by the way, is not a plan. And then you start that plan. And you're like, hey, things are going well. You string together a couple of good weeks of whatever that kind of habit is, discipline, or the actions necessary to achieve the goal. And then you wane in your motivation, in the clarity of what you're even after, and you stop and you go back to where you were. Thus the frustration. Well, I've been in that place more than I care to be. So if you are ready to get out of that cycle as well, or just build on some of the momentum that you found already, I think this is going to be a good episode for you, and we'll do it in a quick amount of time. So here's the lessons I've learned firsthand about goal setting the right way. First of all, less is more. That's number one. Less is more. I have always, my eyes have been bigger than my stomach. And when you're kind of like myself, you're always focused on the upside, the possibility, and the potential of something. And so you begin kind of a la carte throwing all of these different things that you want to see change in your life or goals that you want to achieve without realizing that it takes time and energy and resources and a different change in your life to achieve even one goal. So my advice to you today is set one goal in each area of your life. Could be business, occupation is a category, health, relationships, your marriage, your family, spirituality, financial goals. Whatever the categories are that you've identified, just set one goal in each of those categories. And you'll be surprised. I think what you'll find out is you will have more success achieving one goal in an area than setting 3 or 4 goals that you don't achieve really any of them or do any of them well. And don't underestimate the power of one thing. I'll never forget. 3 years ago, I implemented a life-changing habit known as flossing. Not to be confused with the dance move, although I do that as well. I'm talking about flossing your teeth, and it is kind of juvenile, I know, but I just never was consistent in flossing my teeth. So my wife and I, Lydia, we were like, hey, this year we're going to just be very good at flossing our teeth. So we started doing that. And it was a small thing that we implemented, but then before long, it became a very consistent routine part of our lives. And if you can move the needle in one area of your dental health, flossing is it. And it just felt like a small win. On the small things, there is a book that you should read. It's a short one. It's by Admiral McRaven, who was a former Navy SEAL. And it talks about the importance of making your bed in the morning. And that's like one of the ways that you need to start your day. And the reason being in the military philosophy is every little win that you get compounds and rolls forward to the next win. So when you wake up and your feet hit the floor and you make your bed, you have started your day with a sense of accomplishment. And that has a very powerful effect on the human psyche and the brain. Atomic Habits also talks about this. And so when you consistently do those small things, they accumulate and build on a daily basis into other more important things. So don't underestimate something small, something manageable, and less is more. Okay. Number 2, be honest with yourself. It can be really hard to be honest about where you're at because honestly, it's painful to look in the mirror and to realize that you're further away than you think you are in a certain category of your life, or that you haven't made progress towards something that you know that you should have been doing a long time ago. And so being honest with yourself is very painful. Instead, a lot of us opt for maybe seeing some kind of other version of ourselves or picture of what is true. And again, my dreamer visionary personality jumps to the future. And so I need to figure out, like, where am I really on the highway and how far am I from my destination? Number 3, create the right environment. This is really big. This is probably one of the most underrated aspects of setting goals. Okay. Atomic Habits talks about this. You know, if you have something that you're trying to do every morning, set that thing in an area that happens in and around another habit. So for example, maybe you put your phone charger over where your toothbrush is, and your goal is to floss every morning, right? And so every night you plug your phone in the bathroom and you put floss on top of your phone. And then when you wake up, you know you're going to go to your phone because it's a habit that you have. And then when you get there, you're going to realize that the floss is sitting on your phone, and it's going to be a catalyst for you then to move in another habit. It's called habit stacking. And so you're taking existing habits in your life, little areas that you've won, that you have achieved goals or been successful in a certain area, and you're leveraging that past success to help you in new areas of your life. And so creating the right environment is really important. Use places and things in your rhythms in your life that you've already won and leverage that to achieve new things. The second big component of creating the right environment is people. Now, this is a tricky one, right? Because we've all talked about the proverbial accountability partner, which sounds great. The reason it gets thrown around a lot is because we all know that we need accountability by nature. And so there's different ways to hold yourself accountable or to find a group of other people that are going to hold you accountable. Now, I just want to say this. Accountability doesn't mean somebody is responsible for texting you every morning to remind you. Because at the end of the day, if you don't want some change more than someone else wants it for you, it's not going to happen. So on the people side of things, this is one of the most applicable examples that I have. I, by nature, am a very collaborative person. So one of the best things I ever did in achieving a goal is I found other people who wanted the same thing that I wanted, and we did it together. And that's really, really important. They wanted the same thing that I did. So in 2018, I decided, you know what? I want to run a marathon. I had done cross country and track in high school. I had run a little bit in college, and I thought it was time to level up, go for something bigger that I'd never done before. So my goal was to run a marathon. So I floated it to a couple of my buddies who I know were also active, and we kind of cobbled together a group of 4 of us that had decided to run and train for this marathon together. And if you've ever looked at a marathon training plan, it's a pretty daunting toll on your body. I mean, especially if it's like you're going from nothing. And so you start and maybe you're doing 5 runs a week, starting out anywhere from 1 to 3 miles. Well, we were doing a 16-week training program, and my one buddy in particular, he was very disciplined, very regimented, and I kind of piggybacked off of his disciplined nature, and it benefited him because he had somebody to actually train with as well. And so we were able to create something that I like to call synergy, right? Synergy is when 1 + 1 = 3 instead of 2. You take 2 people moving in the same direction, want the same goal, and now you're actually increasing the likelihood that you achieve that goal because you have that added energy from the other person and support. And so, man, like I remember one time, this was like deep into the training program, we'd wake up at 4 a.m. on a Saturday and run like 22 miles. And it was raining and it was terrible weather. And it can be really tough, especially when you realize that most goals require some level of monotony or routine, just drudgery kind of things. Like it's not sexy, it's not flashy, it's just grueling, it's a grind. And when you hit the grind phase of a goal, it's really helpful to have someone else there that wants the same thing. Now, why do I keep saying the same thing? Because, pro tip, someone is not going to help you achieve your goal if it's going to take them in the opposite direction or even like off course from what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, everybody has to live their own life and take ownership of their life. And so if you're heading in a certain direction, the key is to find people that want that. And sometimes you think you found someone that wants that, and then you realize that they don't. And I think that's why a lot of relationships aren't able to be accountable for each other. But it is possible to find people who want the same thing and to pursue that. It could be something very small, like training for a marathon or being a part of a book club so that you can be more intentional to read, to something larger like scaling a business or achieving different income goals and investing. So create the right environment. Number 4, understand what you're going after. What do I mean by that? Well, I think one of the big questions that we don't ask ourselves is, the goal that I've set, is this a one-time goal or is this a way of life? And you can use goals to create new habits in your life. For example, training for a marathon. By the nature of me pursuing that goal, it created a rhythm of me running 5 times a week, which I was not doing prior. And I could have finished that marathon and continued the habit of running that was necessary for me to achieve that goal. But your mind, you really have to determine on the front end, is this a new way of life or is this just a seasonal thing that I'm going to try it and do something new? Because if you're not clear on the front end before you reach the destination, then you probably won't follow through with it becoming a way of life. You'll just look at it as a one-time thing. So here's some questions you can ask yourself. What changes are going to be required of me to achieve this goal? We often look at the external stuff that needs to change, right? Like, okay, if I'm going to buy a piece of real estate and my goal is to get my first investment property this year, I need to save up $50,000 to begin my first investment property. So that's an external thing. You need money. But what people don't realize is there might need to be something internal inside of you, maybe a change in your spending habits, a change in the way that you treat your personal finances, in that now you're going to start tracking them and create a budget. And those are internal changes in your habits and your belief systems that need to happen in order for you to save up the $50,000 that's then going to help you buy the piece of real estate. If you're always, looking at the external stuff, then you're really going to miss the root cause of what's holding you back. Second question you ask yourself when it comes to understanding what it is that you're going after. What knowledge, skills, resources do I need to attain this goal? What knowledge or skills or resources do I need to attain this goal? Again, you don't want 16% of a plan. You really want to understand what are the ingredients that are going to gel together when I put them in the pot and create this like awesome recipe of success. If you're not clear on that, then it makes sense why you're not getting your goals, because you don't even know what components are adding up to you achieving that. So for example, Seth and I sat down this last week to do planning for the year ahead, and we use Traction, which is our entrepreneurial operating system for our businesses. And it's very thorough in pushing you to identify what are the measurables, what's the scorecard that we should be tracking, that we know that if we do these things, it's going to help us achieve these goals. What are the issues and the obstacles that stand in the way of us achieving these goals? And then how do we solve around those? And so you're not just making this generalized thing of like, I want to lose 25 pounds. Well, how are you going to lose 25 pounds? Are you going to do it through changing nutrition? Well, what's your nutrition currently that's not working for you, that's keeping your weight on? Carbs, sugar, dairy, inflammatory foods. Do you plan on cutting those out? How? Right? Like, we just generalize things that are from a goal perspective. On the flip side of that, we also overcomplicate it. So know that there are certain things that you can eliminate that are going to move the needle in the biggest way for you that aren't super complicated. So for example, people are like, oh, if I cut out sugar from my diet, that's going to have a big impact on my health. Yes, it is. It's going to increase your energy. It's going to regulate your blood sugar. It's going to decrease the inflammation in your body, and you're not going to feel sore. It's going to regulate, your mood. All of those things happen by doing one thing, which is cutting out sugar. So there are certain things that you can eliminate or do that have a disproportionate impact on you achieving your goals. How long is it going to take for me to achieve this? You want to be realistic with yourself about that. You can't just jump into something and say, well, I'm going to do this and then expect some kind of change in the next couple of weeks if it's going to be a multi-month process or a year-long thing or even further. Okay, let's tie it all together. So I mentioned to you guys, Seth and I use Traction. We have done that probably on and off for the last year, but more religiously in the last 3 months in our business. In doing that, I can tell you that I have more confidence now in where we're going in our business than I ever have before. And it's because we're actually measuring what it is that we're doing. And that is showing us in real time whether or not we're getting closer to where we want to go. And even further than that, if we're not getting closer to where we want to go, what are the things that we need to change to do that? So for example, we have income goals each week that we need to get under contract in real estate. And those income goals give us a real pulse on whether or not we're hitting the wider goal of what we need to do. So it's just taking something really big, breaking it down into quarterly stuff, and then weekly, and then daily. And then holding yourself accountable to that. So Traction's been an awesome, very applicational tool for business. If you are self-employed, entrepreneurial in nature, you can use Traction on any business. And once you create that framework, it really becomes a new way to plug into any scenario and have confidence that you can move the needle in make some big moves. The other thing that applicationally I do is more on a family and a relational side of things. So this is probably, 10 years ago. Lydia and I started what we called a prayer retreat. So this came from some of our college days where we were encouraged to take concentrated amounts of time set aside for the purpose of praying and reflecting, usually around the beginning of a new year. And, we would, at that time, we would sprinkle in fasting, which is a great spiritual discipline along with some health benefits as well if you've never done that before. And then when we got married, we carried that principle forward and said, hey, what if every year we made the discipline of getting away, her and I, taking time to work on our marriage, on our family, versus being in our marriage and in our family? Because unfortunately, the urgent always crowds out the important. And so no one is going to help you set aside time to think about the most important things that only you can do and only you can think about in your family or your marriage or any area of your life. And so we did that. We would go book an Airbnb, or sometimes we'd keep it simple and we'd find someone's house that had just a nice room. And we said, hey, can we just crash in here for 2 days and we're just going to meet and talk. We bring our own food. That was when our kids were younger and we couldn't get away overnight somewhere. And so it's always kind of changed and morphed over the years. There have been years that we haven't done it. And then we get back and we're like, man, we feel the effects of not doing that because it's time for you to put things on the calendar, to be intentional, to make sure that the values that you have actually come through into your life. And the beautiful part about all this is when you start doing this, you avoid the R word. The R word is regret. So when you're able to actually bring alignment into your belief system, live that out into who you are, you avoid regret. And so that's how we, very practically have done that. I have a habit tracker on my phone, and I'm going to end with this. You don't get your goals, you get your standards. Goals are great. You write them down. You do everything we talked about. You break them down. You understand what are the microscopic things that add together to achieve this. And really, one of the biggest ways that you can move the needle in your life is understanding that you don't get your goals, you get your standards. Your standards are what you tolerate. They're the habits that you operate by, the belief system of like, I do this. I don't do this one time. I don't do this some of the time. I do this. This is who I am. I am someone that reads books. I am someone that exercises. I am someone that cares about my health. I am someone who grows and learns continually and is willing to try new things. I am someone who works hard. When you speak that from an identity perspective, and then you build habits around that, those habits, you need to understand that the daily and the weekly habits, those will propel you towards your goal. In a general sense, they will move you in the right direction. So on my phone right now, I have 4 habits. If I do these every day, then I know that Garrett as a person is moving towards my specific goals that I have in my health, my business, my relationships. And those 4 things are: read a chapter of the Bible every day, read 10 pages of a book, exercise for 30 minutes, and some nutritional stuff, which will evolve. Right now, it's not eat gluten and don't eat dairy. So if I do those 4 things, I know I'm moving in the right direction. So hopefully this is framed a little bit for you before you vomit and set it aside or get frustrated because you've never had a lot of success in it. Persevere with it. Be realistic. Start small and setting a goal this year, and then find somebody, create an environment that's going to actually help you achieve that. And I think you'll realize that you're actually going to surpass that and get further than what you thought. Most people they overestimate what they can do in a year, and they underestimate what they can accomplish in 5 years.
As always, excited that you joined us for another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. If you want to learn how you can use your hard-earned capital to diversify into real estate, go to our website, reinvestcapital.us, and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper.